Picture yourself stepping out of a time machine and into the muddy streets of Tudor England. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and unwashed bodies as you navigate through bustling markets filled with the shouts of vendors peddling everything from leather goods to questionable meat pies. The scene is vibrant yet gritty, a far cry from the sanitized corridors of our modern world. Now, imagine that this is not a temporary visit but your everyday reality. The cobblestones beneath your feet are uneven, threatening a twisted ankle with every step. Above, the wooden beams of overhanging houses creak ominously, their surfaces stained with the residue of countless winters. Your clothing, made from scratchy wool or coarse linen, provides little luxury against the chill of a damp morning. But it's not just the physical discomforts that would challenge your survival. You are now in a world where disease lurks in every corner, where a simple cold can spell doom, and medical knowledge barely scratches the surface of understanding the human body. A world where food is simple and often scarce, leading to a diet that leaves your body craving essential nutrients. Hygiene is, by modern standards, non-existent, and the very water you drink could be your undoing. And over all of this, the shadow of the monarchy looms large, a place where a king's whim can shift your destiny overnight. Stay with us as we unravel the mysteries and harsh realities of this captivating yet perilous era, revealing just why surviving life in Tudor England would require more than just strength but an extraordinary measure of luck and resilience. The Perilous Pox was a silent, ruthless killer in Tudor England. Smallpox, one of the most feared diseases of the time, spread rapidly through the crowded streets and markets. Imagine a world without vaccines or the understanding of germs. People lived in fear of a simple sneeze or a cough, knowing it could mean the beginning of the end. The disease struck indiscriminately, affecting rich and poor alike, its symptoms recognizable by the fever and rash that would cover every inch of skin. But what truly made smallpox terrifying was the lack of effective treatment. Tudor physicians, though adept with herbs and potions, had little armor against such virulent foes. The best remedies often included bloodletting, thought to balance bodily humors, or applying poultices, which rarely alleviated suffering. As a result, hospitals were filled with desperate souls hoping for relief that rarely came. The mortality rate was grim, claiming the lives of many and leaving survivors with scars that marked them for life. Entire towns could be decimated, their populations halved virtually overnight as the disease ravaged communities without mercy. This harsh reality left families fractured and economies reeling, underscoring how reliant the era was on human resources. Survivors were often shunned due to fear of contagion, leading to social isolation in an already challenging world. This crisis was a perpetual reminder of life's fragility and the constant balance between existence and despair in Tudor England. As you can see, surviving the pox was less about escaping illness and more about sheer fortune. Let us unravel further into the daily challenges and yet another facet of the life-threatening conditions of this era. Mysterious ways of medicine in Tudor England were a concoction of hope and hazard. Picture a time when the human body was an enigma and medicine was more art than science. If you were stricken with an illness, the local physician might prescribe bloodletting, a practice based on the belief that draining your blood could restore balance to your body's humors. Leeches were often employed for this purpose, their slimy bodies seen as tiny agents of healing. Yet more often than not, these methods left patients weaker, not stronger. Imagine the courage needed as you sat in a dim, cramped chamber, the air heavy with the scent of herbs and desperation. Herbal concoctions were the other cornerstones of Tudor medicine, a curious blend of superstition and observation. Using elements from nature, healers crafted potions that promised relief. From willow bark salves for pain to foxglove for heart issues, these remedies were a roll of the dice. But without the knowledge of dosages or side effects, their effectiveness was dubious at best and dangerous at worst. This era's healthcare was a delicate dance with danger, where each treatment was a leap of faith into the unknown. For many, the fear of medicine rivaled the fear of illness itself. Mortality loomed large, but so did the hope that perhaps this time the remedy would be the one to restore health. Tudor England's medical practices mirrored its unpredictable nature, bound by the limits of its time yet driven by the relentless human spirit to heal. As we continue our journey, let us now delve into the daily diet, another critical aspect of life that shaped the health and hardships of this fascinating era. A diet to die for indeed describes the daily fare in Tudor England, where meals reflected the stark divide between rich and poor. The diet largely consisted of bread, the staple of every meal, yet for the common folk, it was typically made from barley rather than wheat, leaving it dense and less nourishing. Imagine relying on this bread day in and day out, your body yearning for the nutrients it scarcely provides. While the nobility enjoyed a wider array of foods, their indulgence was not without its pitfalls. The lower classes, however, faced a different hardship, with meat being a rare luxury. Most relied heavily on vegetables and grains, with the occasional salted fish or bacon if they were lucky. This scarcity was not only due to economic constraints, but also a lack of preservation techniques. Without refrigeration, food was smoked, salted, or pickled to last, often leading to spoilage and illness when consumed. Malnutrition was rampant as people struggled to meet their nutritional needs. The reliance on ale instead of water, due to contamination fears, further compounded dietary deficiencies. And so, the Tudor era posed a daily challenge to maintain one's health against the odds of a limited and often unsafe food supply. In essence, eating during this time was a gamble with well-being, where each meal could bring nourishment or sickness. As we peel back another layer of Tudor life, let's explore how their unsanitary conditions went hand in hand with their dietary challenges, further impacting health and survival. The Great Stench of Tudor England was an ever-present reminder of the unsanitary conditions that its inhabitants faced daily. Picture walking down a street with open sewers lining the path, channels of waste running underfoot, and no sophisticated sewer system to whisk away the filth. This was a time when waste was discarded freely, often tossed out of windows onto the very streets people traversed. The result was a pervasive stink that clung to the city's air, seeping into homes and public spaces alike. Now consider the infrequent bathing practices of the time. Without the luxury of running water or the knowledge of germs, bathing was a rare ritual, sometimes undertaken only a few times a year. Instead, people relied on heavy perfumes to mask the inevitable odor, a poor substitute for the cleansing we take for granted today. These habits created a breeding ground for disease, turning towns into hotspots for outbreaks. Imagine the health implications of living amid refuse, the risk of illness lurking in every breath and every touch. The absence of modern hygiene practices meant that diseases like cholera and dysentery spread rapidly, claiming lives with brutal efficiency. In a world without sanitation or understanding of infection, every sneeze or handshake carried the potential for disaster. Tudor England's citizens lived in a precarious balance, navigating a life where poor health was often a consequence of their own environment. And so, as we continue to examine the challenges faced by those in the Tudor era, let us delve into the grim reality of dental care, another aspect where the absence of our modern solutions made survival a test of resilience. The danger of dentistry in Tudor England was a grim reality for anyone experiencing dental woes. Imagine a world without modern anesthetics, where the pain of a toothache was a relentless companion. Dental care, if you could call it that, was often a last resort, with the village barber or blacksmith doubling as the local tooth puller. These men relied on rudimentary tools such as pliers and metal hooks to yank teeth from the mouths of suffering patients. The process was swift and brutal, prioritizing speed over comfort, and patients were expected to endure the excruciating pain without the relief of any numbing agents. The concept of hygiene was practically non-existent. Tools were rarely cleaned between procedures, increasing the risk of infection. Remarkably, many believed that the removal of a tooth could alleviate a variety of ailments from headaches to fevers, leading to the frequent and often unnecessary loss of teeth. The absence of preventative care meant that cavities and gum disease went unchecked, leading to severe dental decay. For the unfortunate souls who experienced these issues, the choices were limited: suffer silently or face the agony of extraction. It was a testament to resilience and desperation that many chose the latter, willing to endure agony for a chance at relief. Tudor dentistry serves as a stark reminder of how far medical practices have evolved and how dental health was yet another formidable challenge in surviving this harsh era. As we continue our exploration, let's delve into the substandard housing conditions, further illustrating the daily struggles of life in Tudor England. Shelter from the storm in Tudor England was hardly the refuge you might hope for. Picture homes that were little more than wooden frames covered with wattle and daub, a primitive mix of mud and straw. These structures were often hastily built and poorly designed, leaving many vulnerable to the elements. Imagine huddling inside as the wind howled through the cracks in the walls, bringing with it the cold bite of winter air. The thatched roofs, while picturesque, were prone to leaking. During storms, buckets and pans would be scattered across the floor to catch the relentless drip, drip, drip of rainwater breaching the ceiling. Overcrowding was another harsh reality. Large families often shared single-room dwellings, with each additional member reducing the already scant personal space. Privacy was a luxury few could afford, and personal belongings were scant, often limited to essentials like a few wooden bowls or rough blankets. Now, consider the dimness of these homes, where small windows allowed little light and even less fresh air. Smoke from the hearth would fill the room, creating a haze that stung the eyes and clung to clothing. This was not just a discomfort but a health hazard, as respiratory issues were common. The lack of insulation meant that winters were bone-chilling and summers stifling, each season bringing its own set of sufferings. These housing conditions were not just uncomfortable but dangerous, as they failed to protect inhabitants from the extremes of Tudor weather. For the people of this era, surviving the elements required ingenuity and sheer resilience, relying on makeshift repairs and relentless perseverance. As we peel back another layer of Tudor life, we uncover the limited diet of ordinary folks, highlighting how even their basic sustenance was a reflection of their challenging living conditions. The barley bread and ale diet highlights the limited and monotonous diet that ordinary Tudors endured. Imagine a daily menu consisting mainly of barley bread and ale, both staples that were as much about survival as sustenance. Barley, being more resilient and affordable than wheat, was the grain of choice for most, resulting in bread that was dense and heavy, providing just enough energy to fuel the day's labor but lacking in essential nutrients. This lack of dietary variety was not just a matter of taste but of necessity, as the common folk had little means to afford or access a diverse array of foods. Meat was a rarity, often reserved for special occasions, and vegetables, while more available, offered limited nutritional relief. The reliance on ale, even among children, stemmed from the scarcity of clean water. Ale was brewed in a way that made it safer to drink, but it was also low in alcohol, serving as a basic hydration source more than a luxury. However, this diet led to widespread deficiencies, impacting health in ways that modern audiences might find unimaginable. Vitamin deficiencies, particularly of vitamin C and iron, were common, leading to ailments such as scurvy and anemia. This had a direct effect on energy levels, productivity, and overall well-being, influencing everything from a person's ability to work to their susceptibility to other illnesses. For the Tudors, food was truly a matter of survival. and this meager dietary existence was a stark reflection of the era's broader struggles with poverty and resource scarcity. As we dig deeper into the tapestry of Tudor life, let's explore the herbal remedies and potions that were as much a part of their survival strategy as their humble diet. The horrors of herbalism in Tudor England were an unsettling blend of hope and hazard, revealing the era's reliance on nature to ease ailments. Imagine a world where the line between healer and charlatan was often blurred. Herbal remedies and potions were concocted with a mix of superstition and scarce medical knowledge, making every sip or salve a gamble with health. Imagine being prescribed a poultice of mashed herbs designed to draw out fever or fend off infection without a true understanding of why it might work. Physicians and healers relied on plants like foxglove or deadly nightshade, unaware of their potential toxic effects. The risks were high. A misjudged dosage or incorrect preparation could easily tip the scales from healing to harm. Many remedies were based on folklore rather than scientific evidence, making their effectiveness dubious and their dangers real. For instance, mandrake root, with its mystical reputation, was used to alleviate pain but risked causing hallucinations or even death if mishandled. Similarly, hemlock, known for its potent poison, was sometimes used in attempts to relieve joint pain. This reliance on herbalism was both a testament to the era's resourcefulness and a reflection of its perilous ignorance. Herbal treatments could bring temporary relief or permanent harm, underscoring how mere survival hinged on a fragile balance of trial and error. It was a brave endeavor to place one's faith in these remedies, knowing that the outcome was as unpredictable as the Tudor weather. As we move forward, let us turn our attention to the clothing of the period, exploring how fashion was yet another factor shaped by the divides of class and comfort. Courtly clothes and class in Tudor England painted a vivid picture of social disparity, where fashion served as both a distinction and a discomfort. Imagine dressing each day in garments that openly declared your status for all to see. For the wealthy, clothing was elaborate and opulent, with men and women donning layers of heavy fabrics like velvet and brocade, intricately embroidered and adorned with jewels. These extravagant outfits, while striking, were restrictive and cumbersome. Women wore corsets that squeezed their waists into impossible proportions, layered under gowns with voluminous skirts supported by hoops or farthingales. Men sported doublets and hose, often with large puffed sleeves and ruffs that encircled the neck like stiff halos. Despite their ornate appearance, these clothes were far from practical. Movement was constrained, comfort was sacrificed for style, and the sheer weight of the garments could be exhausting. Now consider the attire of the lower classes, whose clothing was dictated by necessity rather than luxury. Their garments were made from coarse wool or linen, simple in design and often worn until threadbare. With limited resources, they relied on natural dyes that faded quickly and lacked the vivid hues of the nobility's wardrobes. The practicalities of life demanded that their clothes be durable more than decorative, a stark contrast to the fashion excesses of their better-off counterparts. And let's not overlook the challenges of cleanliness. Without modern detergents or frequent access to water, laundering clothes was a daunting task. Many garments were spot cleaned or left to air out, often carrying the traces of daily life with them. In such times, even the act of dressing was a reflection of the harsh realities and rigid hierarchies that defined Tudor society. As we continue to unravel the threads of this era, let's explore how open fireplaces, essential to daily life, contributed yet another layer of risk to Tudor existence. Fire and fumigation were integral to the daily life in Tudor England, yet they came with their own set of dangers that we would find alarming today. Imagine relying on an open fireplace as the heart of your home, serving as both your stove and your source of warmth. These fireplaces were indispensable, used to cook every meal and heat every room, their glow a constant presence in homes throughout the country. However, with open flames comes the inherent risk of fire. Sparks could easily escape the hearth, igniting nearby furnishings or the straw-filled roofs that topped many houses, turning a cozy home into an inferno in moments. Fire brigades as we know them didn't exist, meaning that a house fire was often a complete disaster, consuming not only possessions but entire lives. Beyond the burning risk, smoke inhalation was an insidious threat. Without chimneys to properly vent the smoke, the air inside a Tudor home was thick with soot and fumes. Imagine the acrid sting of smoke in your eyes and lungs as you went about your daily tasks, a constant irritant that filled your nostrils and clung to your clothes. This smoke exposure led to respiratory issues, particularly for women and children who spent more time indoors. Persistent coughing, shortness of breath, and other health problems were common, often exacerbating other illnesses in a time when medical help was limited and herbal remedies were all there was. Life depended heavily on these open fires, yet they demanded constant vigilance to avoid tragedy. As we further illuminate the shadows of Tudor existence, let's delve into the oppressive legal system that dictated harsh punishments for even minor infractions, revealing another layer of the era's stark realities. The perils of punishment in Tudor England were a grim reflection of the harsh legal system that governed the land. Imagine a society where even minor infractions could lead to severe consequences, and justice was often swift and unforgiving. Stealing a loaf of bread or committing petty theft could see you facing the stocks, where you'd be immobilized in a public square, subject to the ridicule and scorn of onlookers. But it was not just the minor crimes that faced harsh punishment. The judicial system was notorious for its brutality, with public executions being a common spectacle, drawing large crowds eager to witness the grim proceedings. These executions included hanging, beheading, and even being burned at the stake, serving as a morbid form of entertainment for the masses and a dire warning to others. There was a chilling calculus to these events, intended not merely to punish but to deter. Torture was another tool in the judicial arsenal, used to extract confessions or information from the accused. Devices such as the rack, which painfully stretched the body, or the Iron Maiden, a grisly contraption of spikes, were employed without mercy. Imagine the terror of being hauled before such authority, knowing that truth or lie, the outcome might be the same. The fear of legal retribution hung heavily over the Tudor populace, where accusations could be as deadly as the crimes themselves. In this world, the law was an ever-present spectre, reminding all that survival meant navigating both the letter and the spirit of Tudor justice. As we move forward, let us cast light on the rigid societal framework that further shaped the lives of those living in this formidable era. The feudal food chain was the backbone of Tudor England society, rigidly structuring life and dictating the fate of its people. Imagine a world where each person had a predefined role, and breaking free from it was almost unheard of. At the top of this hierarchy sat the monarch, followed by the nobility and clergy, who wielded significant power and influence. These were the landowners, the decision-makers, and the bearers of privilege. Beneath them were the gentry and wealthy merchants who managed to prosper through trade or service. But as we move further down the ladder, we encounter the vast majority who lived lives of toil and hardship, the peasants and laborers. These individuals worked the land or provided essential services, yet reaped few rewards for their back-breaking efforts. Their livelihoods were subject to the whims of their lords, who controlled their homes, their labor, and even their marriages. Opportunities for upward mobility were scarce, as education and wealth were the only pathways to a higher social standing, both of which were largely inaccessible to the common folk. The harsh reality was that for most, life remained stagnant, a cycle of survival with little hope for change. While the nobility dined in splendor, attended courts, and sought favor with the king, the lower classes faced daily struggles just to meet their basic needs. This stark divide ensured that the social order remained deeply entrenched, with each class dependent on the next for sustenance and productivity. It was a system designed to preserve the status quo, leaving the commoners bound to the soil and their circumstances. As we delve further into the complex dynamics of Tudor life, let us explore the unpredictable nature of monarchical power and how it cast a long shadow over this stratified society. Monarch Madness reigned supreme in Tudor England, where the absolute power of rulers like Henry VIII and Elizabeth I could change lives in an instant. Imagine living in a world where a king's volatile nature or a queen's strategic decision could ripple through society with seismic effect. Henry VIII, infamous for his 6 marriages, wielded his power with both charm and ferocity, reshaping the political and religious landscape to suit his desires. His whims sparked monumental events like the English Reformation, upending centuries of tradition and thrusting the nation into religious turmoil. Under his reign, aligning with the wrong faction or voicing dissent could lead you straight to the Tower of London, where many met a grim fate. Elizabeth I, though celebrated as a formidable ruler, also presided over a court rife with intrigue and fear. Her ability to skillfully navigate through political threats while maintaining a facade of stability was legendary. But even so, falling out of favor with her or being suspected of treason could result in severe consequences. The court was a place of both opportunity and danger, where alliances shifted like the winds and trust was a rare currency. For the average Tudor citizen, this environment bred constant apprehension, as the monarch's decisions directly impacted taxation, land ownership, and even local governance. Life under such absolute rule was fraught with uncertainty. The monarch's capacity to make or break fortunes, end lives, or spark conflict meant that for many, survival depended not just on wit and loyalty, but on navigating the unpredictable tides of royal favor. As we continue to explore this era's intricate tapestry, let's examine the fragile social safety nets and the looming threats that further complicated life in Tudor England. The fickle finger of fate in Tudor England notoriously amplified the precariousness of daily life. Imagine a society without the safety nets we now take for granted, where individuals stood one bad crop away from calamity. Poverty was a shadow that loomed large for most, and starvation was a real and constant threat. With no formal welfare system in place, the people were often at the mercy of circumstances beyond their control. In times of need, they turned to charity and the church for relief. Monasteries and local parishes provided alms to the needy, offering food and basic assistance as a gesture of compassion. Yet these resources were limited, stretched thin by the overwhelming demand. The system relied heavily on the benevolence of wealthier patrons, and when generosity waned or resources dwindled, many were left to fend for themselves. Now consider the impact of a poor harvest. This was a society where agriculture dominated the economy, and a single season of bad weather or pestilence could spell disaster for entire communities. With crops failing, food prices soared, leaving even those with modest means struggling to afford basic sustenance. Hunger became a harsh reality, driving families to desperate measures to survive. For the peasants and laborers who toiled the land, their very existence was tied to the earth's fickle yield, a tenuous bond that broke without warning. This fragility underscored the era's stark inequality, where the elite had the means to weather such storms while the lower classes faced dire implications. The lack of predictability and security in Tudor life meant that fate was a relentless opponent, constantly testing the resilience and resourcefulness of its people. As we continue to navigate the intricacies of this unpredictable era, let's delve into the religious upheavals that further shaped the landscape of Tudor England. The reel of religion in Tudor England spun a tale of upheaval and uncertainty, fundamentally altering the lives of its people. Imagine living through the English Reformation, a seismic shift that redefined spiritual identity and allegiance overnight. Under Henry VIII, the break from the Catholic Church was as much about politics as it was about faith, plunging the nation into a whirlwind of doctrinal change. For the average Tudor, this meant navigating a landscape where yesterday's truth could become tomorrow's heresy. Religious dissent was a dangerous game, with severe consequences for those who dared to oppose the crown's edicts. Aligning with the wrong belief system could make you a target of persecution, and loyalty was often a matter of survival rather than conviction. Picture the fear of attending services in secret, worrying that a neighbor's whisper might lead to your arrest. The threat of punishment hung heavily over those who clung to traditional Catholicism or embraced radical reformist ideologies. As monarchs changed, so too did the religious tides, with Edward VI advancing Protestant reforms and Mary I fervently restoring Catholic allegiance. Each transition brought fresh peril, requiring citizens to be ever vigilant in aligning their practices with the ruling power's preferences. The impact on daily life was profound, from altered worship practices to the dismantling of monasteries, which had long served as community lifelines. This instability not only affected personal faith but also strained social and economic structures, leaving many adrift in a rapidly changing world. The incessant push and pull of religious authority dictated the rhythm of existence in Tudor England, embedding a climate of fear and uncertainty that shaped both public and private domain. As we continue to unravel the complexities of this era, let us step onto the grim fields of battle where the specter of war loomed large, a constant presence in the Tudor tapestry. The grim ground of battle in Tudor England was a perilous reality for those drawn into the era's frequent conflicts. Imagine living in an age where the call to arms could reach you at any moment, tearing you from your daily life to fight for a monarch's ambitions or defend against foreign threats. Conscription was a looming possibility, a duty imposed upon men from all walks of life who were expected to leave their homes, their families, and march into the unknown. The battlefield was chaotic, a cacophony of clashing steel and battle cries, but perhaps even more daunting than the fight itself was the lack of proper equipment. As a soldier, you might find yourself armed with little more than a basic pike or a second-hand sword, your body protected only by a leather jerkin or simple chainmail if you were lucky. The technology of warfare was brutal and crude, with artillery and gunpowder adding a new and deadly dimension to conflicts. Now consider the conditions you would face. Trenches and camps were breeding grounds for disease, and the constant exposure to harsh weather and inadequate supplies only compounded the soldiers' suffering. Hunger and exhaustion were constant companions, weakening resistance both physically and mentally. The grim reality was that many who marched off to war never returned. The mortality rate among Tudor soldiers was staggering, with many meeting their end not on the battlefield but due to wounds, malnutrition, or illness. This harsh truth cast a long shadow over the lives of those left behind, with families often losing their primary breadwinners and communities suffering the loss of men and resources. The specter of war hung heavily over Tudor society, a constant reminder of the era's volatility and the relentless demands placed on its people. As we continue to unravel the numerous trials faced by the Tudors, let us now delve into the high-stakes realm of childbirth, illuminating another facet of survival in this bygone era. The chilling childbirth experience in Tudor England was a gamble with fate that most modern audiences can scarcely imagine. Envision a world where bringing new life into the world was fraught with danger for both mother and child. The lack of any real medical assistance meant that childbirth was primarily attended at home by midwives. These women, though experienced, had to rely on age-old practices and the earth's resources to guide them. Imagine entering labor with no anesthesia to dull the pain, no antiseptics to ward off infection, and no modern medical interventions to address complications. The maternal mortality rate was alarmingly high, with many women succumbing to complications such as hemorrhaging or puerperal fever, conditions that are easily managed today. Infant mortality was equally grim, with countless newborns lost to infection or simply failing to thrive. Superstition played a significant role in the birthing process, with many rituals and beliefs intertwined with tradition. It was common to see amulets and charms placed around the birthing chamber, meant to protect both mother and child from evil spirits. Certain herbs were used to ease labor pains or ensure a healthy delivery, though their effectiveness was mostly rooted in belief rather than science. The alignment of the stars could also influence the perceived outcome of the birth, with astrologers consulted to predict a child's future. Midwives often performed their duties under the weight of these expectations, seen as mediators between the physical and mystical realms of childbirth. In this era, childbirth was both a natural process and a profound gamble, with every birth a testament to the enduring strength and courage of Tudor women. As we delve further into this perilous era, let's examine the relentless toil and limited rights that defined peasant life, shedding light on the harsh realities faced by this backbone of Tudor society. The plight of peasantry in Tudor England was a stark reminder of the era's deep societal divides. Imagine spending your days from dawn till dusk laboring in fields, tending to crops that would more likely end up feeding your landlord or the crown than your own family. This rigorous daily toil was relentless, shaping the lives of peasants who reaped little reward from their efforts. The land they worked on was not theirs to own, but rather rented from landlords who set the rules and collected substantial portions of their harvests as rent. The backbreaking labor required immense physical endurance, as the tasks were performed with rudimentary tools and without the aid of modern conveniences. From plowing fields to harvesting crops and tending livestock, the work was grueling and the hours long. And yet, despite their critical role in sustaining the economy and providing for others, peasants held limited rights. They were bound by strict laws that dictated their movements and marriages, and even how they could dress. The crown imposed taxes that weighed heavily on their limited earnings, often leaving families struggling to make ends meet. These demands frequently led to difficult choices, forcing peasants to prioritize paying dues over providing for their immediate needs, perpetuating a cycle of hardship and poverty. Opportunities for protest or improvement of circumstances were sparse, as dissent could lead to severe repercussions, from fines to imprisonment. This reality underscored the suffocating grip of the established order, where change was elusive and the struggle for survival was constant. For the Tudor peasant, life was a continuous negotiation with adversity, a testament to resilience and an enduring spirit in the face of systematic oppression. As we delve deeper into this challenging era, let's explore the scarcity of clean drinking water that further compounded the hardships of daily existence in Tudor England. Water woes were a persistent concern in Tudor England, where clean drinking water was rarer than a royal feast. Imagine a time when the water flowing through towns and villages was more menace than refreshment. With rivers and wells serving as repositories for household waste, animal carcasses, and industrial runoff, contamination was rife. The understanding of waterborne diseases such as cholera and typhoid was non-existent, making every sip a potential hazard to health. Residents often resorted to ale as their primary beverage, a safer alternative due to its brewing process, which killed off many pathogens through fermentation. Ale, consumed by both children and adults, was a staple served at every meal, offering hydration in a world where water was fraught with unseen dangers. However, this reliance on ale came with its own set of issues. Although it was typically low in alcohol, the constant consumption did little to address nutritional needs, and for many, it was more about survival than choice. The brewing of ale required time, resources, and skill, often posing challenges for the poorest who had to choose between brewing and other necessities. This precarious situation was compounded by the demands of maintaining quality, as improperly brewed ale could itself cause illness. The lack of uncontaminated water underscored the vulnerability of the population, as recurring health problems weakened communities and contributed to the high mortality rates of the era. The ever-present water woes painted a picture of a society struggling against its environment, where ingenuity in brewing offered a lifeline amidst the dangers of daily life. As we uncover more about the harsh realities of Tudor living, let's step into the congested streets of squalor that defined the urban landscape, revealing yet another layer of the formidable conditions faced by its inhabitants. The streets of squalor in Tudor towns were a veritable maze of filth and congestion. Imagine navigating through narrow lanes where the air hung heavy with the stench of refuse and decay. These streets were not just pathways but dumping grounds, where household waste including rotting food scraps and animal remains mingled with the cobblestones. The absence of any organized waste disposal system meant that rubbish piled up, left to the mercy of scavenging dogs or the rare rain to wash it away into the open sewers lining the roads. Picture yourself sidestepping puddles of stagnant water, teeming with insects, their buzzing a constant reminder of the unsanitary conditions that pervaded everyday life. The overcrowding was almost palpable as buildings leaned over the streets, their upper stories nearly touching, creating a sense of suffocation. Daily life unfolded against this grim backdrop, with vendors shouting to hawk their goods amid the cacophony of voices and the clatter of carts. The constant milling of people of all stations, from the impoverished to the well-to-do, added to the crush, transforming the streets into a bustling, chaotic tapestry of Tudor existence. Now consider how these conditions were a breeding ground for disease. With so many people squeezed into such confined quarters, illnesses spread like wildfire, compounded by the lack of fresh air and clean water. The close proximity facilitated the rapid transmission of contagious diseases, making epidemics a frequent occurrence. This congestion forced inhabitants to live and work in spaces teetering on the brink of collapse, highlighting the resilience required to thrive in such an environment. The streets of Tudor towns speak volumes about the era's challenges, where survival often meant enduring the grime and grit with unwavering fortitude. As we tread further into this formidable period, let us explore the tantalizing terrors of travel, revealing yet another dimension of life in Tudor England. The tantalizing terrors of travel in Tudor England add yet another formidable layer to the challenges of the era. Imagine setting out on a journey not by the smooth highways we know today, but along rugged paths that wound through dense woods and desolate fields. Roads as we understand them were virtually non-existent. Instead, travelers navigated muddy tracks that became impassable during bad weather, often turning what should have been a simple crossing into an arduous ordeal. The risk of sinking into a quagmire or damaging a cart on jagged stones was ever present. Now consider the threats from bandits who lurked in forests and isolated areas, waiting to ambush travelers burdened with goods. These highwaymen knew the lack of security meant easy prey, turning travel into a high-stakes venture where loss of property or even life was a real possibility. In such times, being part of a group could offer some protection, but solo travelers faced the greatest peril. The pace of travel was slow, dictated by the limitations of foot or horseback. Carriage rides, reserved mostly for the wealthy, were no joyride but a bumpy experience that left passengers sore and weary. Horses and carts could only cover so much ground in a day, making long journeys a test of endurance. For those on foot, progress was even slower, with each mile feeling like a marathon. Overnight accommodations were sparse and often squalid, mere shelters rather than the comfortable inns we might expect, contributing to the journey's taxing nature. The necessity of carrying provisions or risking unreliable taverns added to the burden, highlighting how travel was less an adventure and more a trial by endurance. In this era, the very act of moving from one place to another was fraught with danger and difficulty, a testament to the resilience needed to traverse the Tudor landscape. As we continue to unravel the intricacies of this period, let's explore the taxing toll of taxes, uncovering yet another layer of hardship faced by the people of Tudor England. The taxing toll of taxes in Tudor England was an oppressive weight that bore heavily upon the populace, breeding resentment and hardship across the land. Imagine living with the constant burden of taxes that seemed to multiply at every turn, imposed by a monarchy always in need of funds to support wars, lavish lifestyles, or the realm's sprawling bureaucracy. The crown devised a variety of taxes to extract wealth from its subjects, each one a reminder of the rigid hierarchy that placed the financial strain predominantly on the common folk. Picture yourself as an ordinary Tudor citizen toiling day and night, only to see your hard-earned resources siphoned off through taxes on everything from agriculture to goods. The mere act of owning land, the mainstay of many livelihoods, brought with it the expectation of paying land taxes, a demand that was both relentless and unyielding. Customs duties imposed on imported and exported goods added another layer of financial obligation, hitting merchants and consumers alike. Then there were the tithes, a tax directed towards the church, amounting to 1/10 of your produce or income, all intended to support religious institutions and clergy. It's easy to envision how these burdens left many households on the brink of poverty, struggling to balance their meager earnings with the crown's insatiable demands. Resentment simmered as taxpayers, already stretched thin by the demands of daily life, saw little return on their contributions. Tax collectors, often seen as symbols of the crown's unyielding reach, were met with suspicion and disdain, their presence a constant reminder of the financial yoke under which the populace labored. As we continue to uncover the intricate tapestry of Tudor life, let's examine how entertainment reflected the era's brutal realities, providing both distraction and insight into this complex society. Entertaining enigmas in Tudor England reveal a vivid tapestry of leisure steeped in brutality, reflecting the harsh realities of the era. Imagine a world where entertainment was as much about spectacle as it was about survival, offering diversions that mirrored the period's unforgiving nature. Public executions, for instance, were not just punitive measures but grand events that drew crowds eager for distraction. Picture families gathering to witness the grim proceedings, where the macabre dance of death served as a stark reminder of the consequences of transgressing societal norms. The gallows, a central fixture in town squares, became a stage where justice and entertainment coalesced in a chilling display. This fascination with the morbid was not limited to the scaffold. Bear baiting offered another grisly form of amusement, where the agony of animals set against fierce dogs captivated audiences hungry for excitement. These spectacles took place in specialized arenas, their audiences gripped by the raw battle between beast and hound. In such times, the cries and growls provided a visceral thrill, a respite from the daily toil. For those seeking more cerebral diversions, theater flourished, yet even these performances were punctuated by bawdy humor and vivid portrayals of human folly, reflecting the era's penchant for the dramatic and the grim. The limited options for leisure meant that despite their brutality, these activities were embraced as communal gatherings, a chance to escape the rigors of Tudor life. Entertainment served as both a window and a mirror, offering insight into the societal values and collective psyche, where resilience and the acceptance of life's harshness were ingrained. As we continue our exploration, let's delve into the sprawling spread of superstition, revealing yet another dimension of the Tudor mindscape. The sprawling spread of superstition in Tudor England casts a long shadow over the era, revealing a society gripped by fear and the supernatural. Imagine a world where the unseen and unexplained were ascribed to mystical forces, where every misfortune could be the work of witches or malevolent spirits. This belief system permeated daily life, dictating behavior and social interactions. Picture yourself in a village plagued by crop failure or sickness. Rather than attributing these events to natural causes, suspicion might fall on an outsider or a woman living on the fringes of society, accused of casting spells or consorting with the devil. The fear of witchcraft was pervasive, fueled by ignorance and a desire to find scapegoats for the community's problems. The infamous witch hunts that swept across the land were not only manifestations of this fear, but also tools of control and retribution. Trials often relied on tenuous evidence and confession drawn from torture, where the accused faced the harrowing prospect of drowning or burning should they be deemed guilty. Imagine the chilling atmosphere of a community on edge, where a single accusation could unleash a tidal wave of paranoia and hysteria. Superstition extended beyond witchcraft to an array of omens and signs that influenced decisions and justice. Lunar eclipses, comets, and strange animal behavior were scrutinized for hidden meanings, often interpreted as divine warnings requiring immediate action. This reliance on the supernatural as an explanatory framework held sway over both the governance of the realm and its people's lives, intertwining with the legal system and defying rationality. For the Tudors, living under the weight of superstition required navigating a landscape fraught with suspicion, where one's fate could hinge on forces beyond comprehension. As we continue to unravel the Tudor tapestry, let's take a glimpse into the gory games that entertained and shocked the populace, highlighting another facet of this fascinating era. A glimpse into gory games in Tudor England reveals a society where the line between sport and survival was blurred, reflecting the era's affinity for the brutal and the bold. Imagine a world where entertainment came with the risk of serious injury or worse, each event not just a spectacle but a testament to the period's violent inclinations. Jousting stood at the pinnacle of Tudor sports, an exhilarating and dangerous contest that attracted both participants and spectators alike. Picture armored knights on horseback, charging at one another with lances aimed to unseat their opponent in a vivid clash of courage and skill. While the pageantry of the tournament was a feast for the eyes, the risks were undeniable. A mistimed move or an unfortunate blow could result in broken bones or even death, underscoring the peril inherent in pursuing honor and glory on the tiltyard. Beyond the chivalric displays of jousting lay the more primal and savage entertainment of bear baiting. Imagine the raw tension as a chained bear faced a pack of dogs, a fight orchestrated for the crowd's amusement. The violence of these encounters, with animals trained to attack ferociously, was a chilling display of the era's thirst for visceral excitement. These games were not just about spectacle, but the embodiment of a culture that valued strength and dominance, where the realities of life often mirrored the aggression on display. The Tudor appetite for such brutal contests was a reflection of their world, a relentless pursuit of thrill that echoed the harshness of their daily struggles. This penchant for gory games highlighted a complex interplay of valor and violence, capturing the essence of Tudor England's enduring allure. As our exploration of this formidable era concludes, it's clear that surviving in Tudor England demanded not just physical resilience but a profound understanding of the times, where every facet of life was a delicate dance with danger and circumstance. In summary, the many trials of life in Tudor England paint a vivid picture of an era where every day was a challenge. From the relentless grip of disease like smallpox and the primitive understanding of medicine that left many without hope, to the scarce and often dangerous food and water supplies that tested the resilience of every individual, survival was a constant battle. The harsh living conditions marked by unsanitary streets, subpar housing, and a justice system that favored brutality over fairness further compounded the hardships. These elements of daily life underscored a societal structure that demanded strength and submission from its people, trapping them in a cycle of endurance without comfort. The Tudor world was one where the whims of monarchs and the chains of social hierarchy dictated your fate. It was an existence without modern conveniences, where luxury was limited to the few and grit was the currency of the many. These stark realities illustrate that surviving Tudor England required not just physical strength but an extraordinary measure of luck and tenacity. We invite you to reflect on how the comforts and securities of our world today stand in sharp contrast to the precarious lives of the past. What does it say about human resilience and adaptability that we have transformed from such challenging beginnings to the complex societies we live in now? Do share your thoughts in the comments below, subscribe for more fascinating historical mysteries, and don't forget to like and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest explorations.